I'm Laura, and welcome to Garden Sanity. I wanted to give you an update on my dappled willow and how it's doing now that it's September 2022. But the main reason for this video is to show you what I did. I think I killed, or I'm killing, it's dying, our original dappled willow shrub. And I am sick about it. Absolutely sick about it. Now you may remember last year, this one died, and that wasn't any fault of mine. I didn't do a darn thing to it, and it started dying. And what we ended up left with were a few stems, and there's still a tiny bit of growth right there. But this guy is totally my fault. I decided after the springtime, if you remember in my prior videos, I said, oh, you know what, after it's done with its quote-unquote bloom, which is the beautiful pink leaves in the springtime, that I was going to cut it back away from the pavers. You know, I wanted it to be a little bit neater looking. Well, I should have done that shortly after it bloomed. Instead, I waited and I waited and I waited. And the beginning of July, which was really stupid because we already had several heat waves, I decided, we have a cooler day, I can do this. Well, here's where you're going to learn from my mistakes, and here's where I should watch my previous videos and maybe learn what I share. So there's a reason you don't prune in the summer, and this is it right here. Because what happens with a shrub like dappled willow, when you prune it, and as you can see, I really went to town on it. I mean, I was trying to make it a nice shape and everything. Well, what you end up doing is you end up exposing the roots to the sun. And a shrub like this, why it grows like it grows is because it's covering up the roots. If you look at all these, look how healthy they look. And they're healthy because they're covering the roots up, they're shielding them from the extreme sun, and they're growing beautifully. But what I ended up doing was I ended up exposing the roots. And that slowly but surely is killing it off. It just got too heat stressed. You can see that we do have a soaker hose that we're running, and I'll talk about that in a minute. I think the shrub is not going to make it. It's doing the same thing that actually this one did, where it seems like it's starting from one end and it's just going to keep going. So I may lose this original shrub from whence all these good things came. I propagated all these dappled willows from this one original shrub, and I even have several cuttings from it as well. So don't do that. Don't prune in the summer. Do not prune in the summer. Now, here's sort of a funny story, I guess, if you can find a funny story in this, is after I finished this, I wasn't done. I decided I'm going to start on the next one. So as you can see, this one looks a lot more coiffed. You know, like it got a little bit of a haircut. And then the ones next to it are all nice and natural looking. So what happened was I started on this one and I trimmed it away from the pavers, make it look nice and neat. But what happened was it just got too darn hot out here for me. And so I stopped, thinking I'd come out another day. And within a few days is when I started noticing this stuff. So it's my own fault. This has been slowly dying since I pruned it. I have to just deal with it and admit it, and I'm sharing it with you because this is my confession. I did it. I think I'm killing it. I think I killed it, is what I'm probably going to end up saying in a few months. Don't prune in the summer. Luckily, this guy is going to be okay. And these guys look beautiful and natural. I think it's feeding time in a nest of some sort, so if you hear the birds in the background, that's what that is. Now, up from those shrubs where I just were, is this one on the end. And this one, if you remember, if you don't, I'll put a picture on the screen. I started this from a cutting a few years ago, and it's a nice healthy shrub. It's just as big as these other ones, which were Coppiced last year. But this one is looking great. It's got a nice combination of both the variegated and the green leaves. Now, a couple of things to tell you about these leaves. This time of year, you're going to notice some green leaves. Don't panic. This is what happens this time of year. It's just what it does. What you'll notice if you look closely, however, is you'll see that they're beginning to get their dappled color. And as you go to the end, that's got the least dappled color. So if you look inside the shrub, you'll see that it's much more dappled looking. So these are just developing more. I wouldn't worry this late in the season about having some green stems. It's not a big deal and your shrub is just fine. Now the other thing you're gonna notice, or you may have noticed, I mentioned it, is we've got a soaker hose set up. And the reason we have a soaker hose set up is because this is the first year that it wasn't wet enough for these shrubs. We planted these shrubs here because this was the wettest spot in our yard, and this solved the wet problem. It was great. But for some reason, starting a couple years ago, we had to put a soaker hose out, usually in the hottest parts of the summer. This was the first year we had to put it out and leave it out and use it almost daily when it didn't rain, and it hardly rained at all. So why did that happen, and why is it that, you know, it's not that the dappled willow sucked up all the water, right? Why is it that they need more water than they're getting all of a sudden after, boy, I first planted these in, you know, the first shrub was planted I think in 2010, 2012. I'll put it on the screen because I have no idea. Well, the first culprit is this river birch tree on the other side of the fence in my neighbor's yard. It's a gorgeous tree. We have 2 of them in our front yard. But what do river birches do? They suck up water. River birches love water almost as much as dappled willow. They will seek out, their roots seek out water, and their roots are not happy till they find water. So the dappled willow are now competing with the river birch for water. And that's one of the reasons. The other reason is on the other side of the fence now there's a row of evergreens that are being grown, and those are also seeking out water as well, whereas it used to be just grass on the other side. So that's what happens, and it's no big deal. I'm glad I finally realized what it was that was causing the really strong need for water for these guys. This is something interesting. Look at this, new growth. Do you see that? It's got a little pink shade to it. Might get some little bit of pink there. So yeah, I decided not pruning or trimming the rest of these dappled willow. I did come in here about 2 weeks ago and I did cut the lowest branches away from the very bottom, but left the arching branches to cover them. So if you see here, let me go here on the side so you can see, you know, they're still well protected. So that's what happened. I may have killed the original dappled willow shrub, and I am really, really upset about it. So, do as I say, not as I do. Watch my previous dappled willow videos. That's what I'm gonna do. I'll put them on the screen right here for you. And until next time, happy gardening.